Hey everyone, this is Steve from GamersNexus.net, and today we are looking at the Neverwinter MMORPG's gameplay mechanics and the depth of play. We first looked at the game in our previous character creation video where I walked you through the basic classes, races, and the tweaking of your appearance, but now that our team of 3 editors has had time to play for the entire weekend, I am confident enough to voice opinions on gameplay. The game itself is based on current Dungeons & Dragons, the 4th edition rule set, which was purpose-built by Wizards to be easily accessible to players of both tabletop and, of course, online gaming experiences. And while all of the classes, paragons, which are effectively subclasses, and abilities are not yet integrated with Neverwinter Online, it did have much of its framework in place for this past beta weekend, and a quick disclaimer, this was beta. This was the first beta weekend, so I am not really going to spend a lot of time mentioning things that were bugs because I think they'll be fixed, but gameplay I am fairly positive is set in stone, so we can talk about that. For a crash course on the background, the game is based in the Forgotten Realms universe and specifically takes place in Neverwinter, the city, and its surrounding provinces. This is the same universe where Baldur's Gate, those games, if you remember those, they took place in the Forgotten Realms universe and, of course, the city of Baldur's Gate. And Neverwinter is actually located just slightly north and a little west of Baldur's Gate on the Sword Coast. As soon as you step foot into the world of Neverwinter Online, after the tutorial, of course, you're greeted with a setting-appropriate really just entire city. The architecture is all setting appropriate. There's high fantasy style structures, floating masses of earth up in the air with citadels on top of them, all kinds of crazy stuff that is really just perfect for the universe. So I commend the developers for doing a good job aesthetically and setting wise, and the game's overall aesthetic is cohesive and matching. There are even wandering NPCs that breathe a bit of life into the city. You don't always see that in MMOs, so that was nice. The controls feel mostly fine, animations are smooth, and the basic elements of combat are all fluid enough, but there's a major flaw that we noticed immediately just on character creation all the way through to whatever level we played to this weekend. And it kind of grew and concerned us more as we progressed because we were noticing that the problem was continual. It was not subsiding anytime soon. So here's what we noticed. Character customizations and specifically ability options, pathways, subclasses, all this stuff, overall depth is what we're talking about of development, are all incredibly shallow and weak. All of that stuff is very weak from the get-go. Unlike the tabletop game, and unlike many other MMOs out there, Neverwinter sort of drops you into a universe with a flat template, race, class, appearance, that's it, then sends you out on collection quests, courier quests, and kill X of Y quests almost immediately. I think this is sort of catering to the more novice audience. I feel like it's really appealing to the people who need to be handheld, quite frankly. All of us are fairly, and I say us, meaning everyone who is familiar with gaming and RPGs especially, we know what we want when it comes to a character. You can come up with a concept very quickly, think of something really cool, and then just execute, and you figure out the rest as you go, right? As you level up, you learn about the game. That's just how it works. But this is completely templated, so you're not different from anyone else when you start. You're every other fighter, so do keep that in mind. There's no hesitation when it comes to getting right into the grind either. Not even a honeymoon stage with an alluring veneer. Sort of like Rift has a very cool looking introduction that doesn't exactly follow through the entire game, although separate topic. This is, I think this is likely due to the game's beta stage. I feel like this will change in terms of the introduction. That's probably all placeholder for now, but still kind of disconcerting. Quests are nothing original, honestly. It's all stuff that we've all seen before. They're really just used as an excuse to grant additional XP when you're killing things anyway and happen to be in the area, and in some cases I suppose it's a way to force players to explore, so there's that, I guess, question mark. So yes, the quests are rather boring and bland, but I can look past boring quests if the gameplay is there. If there's enough character depth, heck yeah, I'll play those crappy quests all day long if I have a really cool character to look forward to in the future. These games are a trade-off like that. You can't have it all. But this game has neither right now. So first of all, you're limited to somewhere around 8 or 10 total abilities on your bar, including passive abilities. That, to MMO gamers, is not a lot, right? You're used to 3 hotbars or more at mid-range. This is fixed. You're stuck with those. And I can see that working. I could see myself playing through Rift with 5 abilities and nothing else, obviously not competitively or anything, but I could see it working if it's done right. The problem is it isn't, not in Neverwinter anyway. So you have, for example, I'm not going to go too into depth how this works, but there are encounter abilities, at-will abilities, and daily abilities. In 4th edition, some of us know how it works. Daily, use it once per day, encounter once per encounter, at-will, anytime. Okay, very simple. In Neverwinter, they have to bypass some tabletop to desktop logistics issues and instead just make daily effectively a charge up. I hate to use that phrase, but think of daily as you work toward it progressively as you deal more damage. So that's that. Encounter is based on charges, like a magic wand might have 3 charges before it needs to be recharged. Okay, so just like that, you deal damage, it recharges over time, that's that, and that's really the end of it. So that's what you get. You have a couple of slots for each of these on your bar, so you might have 2 slots for encounter abilities, 2 slots for at-will abilities, and so on. If you think about this mechanically, what that means is as you progress through the game, when you're choosing between one ability or another, you really do not have a whole lot of options. You have to make choices effectively based upon what number is higher. That's not too dissimilar from most MMOs, but most MMOs will at least disguise that in some kind of other shroud of story or cool abilities. For instance, in Neverwinter, if you want to be a damage dealing fighter versus a high hit point fighter, tank fighter, the difference is it's really just stuff like you have 2% higher health or you have 2% more damage. That's so boring, I can't even begin to express it in thoughts, partially because it's 8 a.m. and I stayed up writing the full article linked below all night. But it's just crazy boring. So where do we see the difference in normal MMOs? Well, for example, you might see something like, if you wanted to make the fighting type the damage dealing fighter, you would maybe see something more along the lines of deal an extra 2% damage with slashing weapons and have a chance to inflict a bleed damage over time wound on your opponent. Much more interesting, right? Because suddenly you are now a slashing weapon focused fighter, so axes and swords, which differentiates you from the pack, and you have an ability that is useful in certain situations. Bleed against humanoid guys when you're trying to kite or something like that. So instantly gives you a lot of options in combat and separates you from the pack a bit more, which is what it all comes down to in the end, because otherwise you get stuck in that, why am I playing this game? Oh my gosh, did I just spend my whole weekend playing that? Rut. So that's what I'm talking about. And it's all accentuated by the fact that combat is so easy. I can't even express how easy it is. For the first, I don't know, a couple hours, we each put 10 hours into it this weekend, collective somewhere 20 to 30. For half of it, you don't even need to use most of your abilities. You can get through just holding down left click. And then as it does get harder, there's no actual difference between your enemies. It doesn't register in your brain, I'm fighting an orc or I'm fighting a halfling. They're all freaking the same because they're all equally easy to kill and equally unimpressive. Nothing psychologically ticks that makes you say, I should run away from this guy or I should be scared of this guy, because you know you're going to kill it and your party's going to be fine, because the game is so really just scaled, I think, a little bit geared toward the low end where they're holding hands too much. Maybe this is a beta thing, okay, so I'm not going to eviscerate it because it is in beta, so I will grant it that, but if we're honest, at this point in the game, it's almost done. So just keep that in mind. We do have to look at it fairly, though. So it's not challenging. You don't have a lot of depth of customization. All of your customization options are just increased numbers in one stat or another. There's not really any flourish to it. There's no really added, it's not fleshed out. You're not fleshing out your character. You don't feel like you're being super awesome and different from everyone else. It just feels very templated and bland. And I think that's sort of the statement for today. And further, a lot of the skills that are specific to classes, for example, Dungeoneering is fighter specific, Thievery is rogue specific, and Religion is cleric specific, stuff like that. Those skills, which are class specific, when you encounter items that require them in the dungeon, it is often boiled down to it's trivialized to the point where it's a difference of getting a piece of leather or not. It's a crafting material that you gain from using that skill, as opposed to what I'd like to see, like in DDO, Dungeons Dragons Online, for example, is something that requires the party to work together to maybe use their skills to unlock a secret door. Yes, we did encounter one secret door by using Dungeoneering, but that was it compared to all of the countless pieces of leather I got for using it. So there's nothing really compelling the player to use those skills and use them together. It's just not as cohesive as I would like it to be. I do encourage you to read the full article below. It's fairly long. It goes into depth on all of these thoughts in a very organized manner that lays out the arguments cleanly. So I highly encourage that. At the end of the day, do I recommend it? Sort of. I think it's actually a fun game if you're a novice to MMOs, or if you don't mind being treated like a moron, because it does hold your hand quite a bit. I think that sort of the novices to both D&D and MMOs will be that small niche where they will be most entertained, because it doesn't feel overwhelming. It doesn't throw a ton of complexity at you. It's just like, hey, here's a character, go have fun. You're not really going to see anything you haven't seen before as an experienced player, so I don't think I can honestly recommend it to experienced MMO, to the veterans out there. If you're a massive fan, of Forgotten Realms, absolutely try it. I think there's I think it's all, you can still sign up for beta, so definitely go do that. Give it a shot, don't take my word for it. But personally, having played thousands and thousands of hours of MMOs, and having played many years of tabletop RPGs, and having played far too many games, I'm looking at my shelf and just seeing hundreds of games. It's kind of terrifying. Far too many games to count. My thoughts are that this game has a lot of potential it can take advantage of, but it hasn't yet. It hasn't tapped into it, and frankly, I think it may be too late to tap into it until perhaps a further patch down the road. That's just what I think. Check it out for yourself if you would like to. I would encourage getting your own opinion on it. Read the article below for the more laid out arguments and structured argument. And with that, I will see you all next time. Peace.